There you go again with this. All right, everybody. It's Conspiracy Wednesday. Ladies and gentlemen, the good news, the bad news, and the other shit. Yeah. Good news. Bad news. How many of you guys have heard of the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act? I thought it was important to bring that up. Let me go look it up on Wikipedia. I love Wikipedia. Wikipedia is the online encyclopedia. It's edited as a community. But I think you'll like it. Those of you who don't use it, it's wikipedia.org. And it's really good to use as a reference. It's one of the regular ones I check. Okay, if I'm looking up something, I always do a look at Wikipedia. The NDAA, or the National Defense Authorization Act, is a United States federal law. It's actually a law that specifies the budgets and expenditures of the U.S. Department of Defense. So even though it's a law, it actually is an active process of actually controlling the Department of Defense's budget. Okay? That's all tied into that. Now, as part of the NDAA and part of the controversy of the NDAA is that the provisions in it allow for the indefinite detention of U.S. citizens without any charging. This is the parts again. That means that someone just could, on their whim, decide to indefinitely detain you for the rest of your life. And we can have that as a policy. If you are thought to be either a supporter of our enemies, so you could just be perceived supporter. The language is very vague, at least more vague than people want, and it poses a threat. It actually makes people feel like if they show a video relative to a topic, that they could actually be held as a potential threat and indefinitely detained. The president said he would never use it, but he's fighting to have it. And you know, I'm not trusting. If you ain't gonna use it, you don't need to have it. As far as I'm concerned, I don't want you to have it. So the president is pushing for this, and this is part of the story of today on the Conspiracy Wednesday, is about how the White House is continuing to fight to indefinitely detain U.S. citizens. Here's a piece from RT.com.
Well, a victory today for reporters and activists fighting the controversial indefinite detention law. A federal judge has ruled that the government cannot enforce a provision that allows the military to detain those who support terrorists or associated forces. Now, those two words, associated forces, are key. That's because the plaintiffs in the case against the government, a group of 7 reporters and activists, say they believe they may fall under this category by reporting on the Middle East. They say under the NDAA they could be indefinitely detained because their jobs sometimes require them to interact with terrorists. Well, the judge granted a temporary injunction back in May, but put a temporary block on that part of the law. Federal Judge Catherine Forrest has now made that order permanent. Well, Carl Mayer, an attorney with Mayer Law Group and co-counsel to the plaintiffs, joins us now. Welcome, Carl. So I know that the latest on this today, the government is now trying to appeal this ruling. What does this ultimately mean for this case, and how do you see it playing out?
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Thank you for having me on. Give my greetings to Dr. West, who's coming to the studio later. It was interesting to work with him on this case as well. What today means is that the injunction that the judge issued back in May is now a permanent injunction, and that has far-reaching consequences. It means that these indefinite detentions in a military tribunal cannot be utilized anywhere in the United States of America, not just in the Southern District of New York or the New York area, but any place in the United States of America. So what was temporary has now been made permanent. Is a huge and historic victory for democracy today. We did learn late today that the Obama administration, unfortunately, in our view, has put in a notice of appeal indicating that they plan to appeal this to the Second Circuit and probably ultimately to the Supreme Court. We think this is ill-advised because it contradicts President Obama's campaign statements, It contradicts his criticism of his own legislation in his signing statement. And he knows, as a former constitutional law professor, that this is wholly unconstitutional because this language is so vague in this law. And you gave some of the language earlier. It talks about substantial support for associated forces. And if any journalist or activist is seen as reporting or offering opinions about groups that could somehow be linked not just to al-Qaeda, but to any opponent of the U.S. or even opponents of our allies, they could be sent to a military prison indefinitely without counsel, potentially forever, because the end of hostilities has no meaning. So this is actually a quite dramatic opinion that the judge wrote. It was a 112-page opinion. I recommend that your listeners read it. I think it's a refreshing break from the vapid, often fact-free campaign that we see for the presidency between Obama and Romney. If you want to see democracy in action, you could go to our website, stopndaa.org, or carlmayer.com, and it tells you how to get to view the opinion online. It's a real exercise in how democratic government should work. Very thoroughly written, extensively researched and footnoted. I think this opinion is rock solid. I think the Obama administration can appeal it to the Second Circuit. They can appeal it to the Supreme Court. They can appeal it to God Almighty if they so choose, but I don't think they're going to get this reversed because it's fundamentally founded. The opinion is, Judge Forrest's opinion is fundamentally founded in the First Amendment doctrine that's been upheld time after time by even the conservatives on the Supreme Court of the United States. In fact, Justice Scalia is quoted in the opinion.
And I do want to read a part of that opinion, Carl, from Judge Catherine Forrest. Her ruling states, quote, due deference does not eliminate the judicial obligation to rule on properly presented constitutional questions. Courts must safeguard core constitutional rights. A long line of Supreme Court precedent adheres to that fundamental principle in unequivocal language. So kind of going along with that, I mean, your reaction to the judge upholding the Constitution and more on how this law raises these questions of constitutionality.
Good points in the chat room
Sure.
by PMC.
Well, that's what's so fascinating about the opinion. I highly recommend it to your viewers. That's what's so fascinating, I think, about Judge Forrest. I think there's not too often judges are not profiled or discussed in the media, and I think she ought to be, because she is a very mainstream attorney, former corporate attorney, Obama appointee, and it's fascinating that she wrote this opinion. And her opinion is really, it's almost a class in our constitutional rights that's available. This class is available, if you read it, to all Americans. It discusses in detail how, for example, journalists such as yourself and activists are protected under the First Amendment rights to free speech when they talk about issues, even issues of national security. And because they are so protected, when Congress passes a law that is so vague, that law has a chilling effect on everyone's speech. And that is not permitted under our Constitution. You can't chill a journalist's speech. They can't chill your speech or your colleague's speech or your producer's speech or other journalists that you work with by holding a sword of Damocles over your head, by threatening you with being detained by the military. That's something that you have a fundamental right to be protected by. The other fundamental right you have is a right to due process, meaning that let's assume they thought that a reporter for RTL is engaged in expressive activity that supports terrorists. You have a right to prove that that's not true in front of a jury of your peers. What the Obama administration has been saying is, we're going to take that right away from you, and we're going to send you to a military prison or detain you indefinitely. And that's not how the Constitution works. The Constitution gives you those fundamental bedrock protections. And beyond that, Judge Forrest firmly and full-throatedly said, there are three branches of this government. That's what the separation of powers is all about. The executive branch, the executive and Congress can't just act
the
unilaterally.
president would be a dictator.
We, as judges, get to review what the executive branch does, and that's what makes our democracy strong and vibrant. And all too often in the last decade, the executive branch has ignored the judicial branch, has ignored the judges, has tried to ram down these anti-civil liberties laws down the throats of the judges. And I think Judge Forrest is now one of several federal judges who are saying enough is enough. We are part of the democratic process. We're here to uphold.
And these are all lawyers.
The fundamental.
The president's a lawyer, top of his class, right?
Rights of journalists and activists.
Okay.
And that's what she has done. And so it is a very dramatic day for democracy.
And a big victory for you, but we see that the government now is trying to file this appeal. So this fight, it looks like it's going to continue. Do you see it, Carl, going to the Supreme Court?
Well, I think that in large part depends on the Obama administration. I think they're ill-advised to appeal this at all. The Obama administration has now lost 3 times. They lost the temporary injunction, they lost the motion for reconsideration, and they lost the hearing on a permanent injunction. I say 3 strikes, you're out. They ought to withdraw any attempt to appeal. If they do appeal in the Second Circuit, Judge Forrest's opinion is grounded in Second Circuit law. The Second Circuit is the highest appeal court in this area before the Supreme Court. I have no doubt that the Second Circuit would uphold Judge Forrest. Then it's a question of whether it goes to the Supreme Court. If the administration is so intent on undermining the constitutional protections of American citizens that they want to take this to the Supreme Court,
wow.
I wish them well in their endeavor, but I don't foresee the Supreme Court, with whether it's a conservative or liberal majority or whatever its configuration, I don't see the Supreme Court backing down from these fundamental constitutional principles, and I don't expect they will.
Interesting. And of course, this is a very significant case with very serious.
Is this my America?
Carl, do you think that it's getting enough attention in the media?
I don't think so. I must say, I mean, we've been heartened that RTL has been reporting on this from the beginning. There are a few radio stations around the country that I could name. There's a gentleman named Peter Collins who has a radio show out in San Francisco who has reported on this from the beginning. There are a few columnists, but it really shows the very, very narrow scope of debate in this country. That, for example, the major news outlets, ABC, CBS, NBC, nothing on this. Fox News, nothing on it. And MSNBC, nothing on it. Because this issue doesn't fit into their preconceived notions of there's a fight between a Democrat and a Republican for the presidency. And all they care about is their hackneyed storyline that, well, there's a liberal Democrat against a conservative Republican. The fact of the matter is there are more fundamental, serious issues of democracy going on in Judge Forrest's courtroom than on the entire campaign trail put together. In fact, I would trade Judge Forrest's 112-page opinion for every single scrap of paper and email emanating out of the Obama and the Romney campaign, which are nothing but these attack ads and criticisms and admittedly false statements. And instead, you have a serious discussion of the issues. And where the media is, it shows they're just locked into these two parties. It's unbelievable to me, especially since it's the members of the media who are going to be the first ones detained in this. The activists as well. But
it's amazing, but it's consistent with our history.
And we're fighting to protect free speech in America. Where are the media outlets, other than the exception of RTL, of course?
That is a very interesting point that you bring up. We don't have that much time, Carl, but I do want to ask you, as you had mentioned, it's election season, full swing underway here. Do you even see this, the NDAA, being an issue during this election at all?
You know, President Obama is doing his best to take it off the table because he doesn't want to be perceived as quote weak on terrorism, and unfortunately, he has decided that trampling on the rights of American citizens and supporting an unconstitutional law means more than standing up and fighting on principle. And so Romney and Obama, they both agree that the NDAA was a terrific statute, and they're going to agree that it should be constitutional.
All right.
Unfortunately, Yeah.
Wow.
No, sorry to interrupt you there. We're
No
out of
problem.
time, but it's really great to have you on the show. That was Carl Mayer, an attorney with the Mayer Law Group, represents the plaintiffs in this case.
Thank you,
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Thank you for having
RT.com.
me on.
Thank you, my brother. You know, these issues are very important, and I got to say, a lot of commentary coming from the chat room. Let me give you some of the things coming from PMC. He says, we have all these folks in Gitmo. He raises the whole issue of what to do with all the detainees we have over there in Guantanamo. And he says, one issue is Gitmo. They don't know what to do with the detainees they already have. I pointed out that less than 10, by their own admission, what they're reporting, less than 10% of the detainees have provided any useful information. I say if they say less than 10%, it was less than 1%. Because they're lying. Okay, I also say this. They know, like, the reason they can't let them out, PMC, is they know, like you know. Take somebody and put them in one of them little cells for a few years. If they want a terrorist when they went in, they're a terrorist when they come out. Okay? All right, they're a terrorist when they come out. And that's what they don't want to admit. That they know statistically, when they take those people and waterboard them and all that, they're not going home to go We Love America campaigns. Okay? Because this is what you've done with them.
Right.
So this is what the issue is. So they don't know where to send them. They don't want to know what to do with them because they really would just, if they could at a different time, they would have just killed them and tried to silence it. That's what usually went on in the past in these kinds of situations. They just kill you because your embarrassment, getting away, all those kind of things. And so you're collateral damage.
On both sides, too. There's no side that's freed up from collateral damage. There's no one that's more better or more worse for it. You can't even go back and say where it started at and validate it because any information that comes down the pike, I'll be shocked if 50% of it is accurate.
So remember, like Vic says, and I got to be honest, those of you who watch this, you know me. We have to tread sensitively and lightly, I guess, when it comes to the president, even though I resent that to a certain extent. We appreciate and love the image that our president brings. We appreciate and love the impact of what that image does worldwide, for black folks in particular, and also the way that black people are perceived. That's why we love that. I always have to separate out issues to me because the political things that be, to me, PMC, Mac, they design it so that you have these conflicts. That's why the people are brilliant. That's why it's run like this and done like this, the political forces. So they know the people who out there who run campaigns, they study our reactions. And they know that folks like me hate to criticize the president because I have to then turn and look at my mother, who's in love with the idea of the first African-American president to the degree that I can't say anything disparaging around her. So we as black folks are caught up in this. And I am a leftist. I admittedly so, because I want the best for you. So I am dissatisfied with the president, but I admit he's better than the alternatives. And is that good enough? Is that good enough? That's what I raise here constantly. The president has the opportunity on issues like this, like the NDAA, to really step up and stand for something as both the president and as a black man. Okay, I'm sorry. These are the kind of issues where I need you to stand up and be that man for me. For me.
And you know what it takes? It takes the collective of its peoples to actually start to do something before they wait for a president to get in office. Because by the time you do that, the qualifiers for you to get into that role have nothing to do with your ethnicity or background. It really comes, you're too late. It's like doing a study in corporate America. You try to study how they operate today, you're 25 years too late. So the part that, Mario, I agree with you on this, is absolutely hold to a higher standard. But folks, don't be balcony viewers. Don't sit there and wait for the morning after when I say, well, what were you doing about it leading up to this point? And to say 1990.
No,
where was your efforts at as an individual to build up your community?
Be a part of the process.
That's the whole thing.
And then struggle with it. Because PMC is the one who often challenges me about the president because he goes, well, look at he had to deal with this. And those are totally relevant points. See, that's why I'm saying how they get you. They get us because we're caught up and conflicted.
Right.
You know damn well we all are doing this because we want better for the people.
Right.
So we get arguments amongst ourselves.
Right.
That's what's so sad. When, you know that sometimes those of us who want better for the group get so angry with each other that leads to violence among the activists.
Well, you know,
because they get mad at each other because they don't agree on the progress or the way things should occur.
Well, you got to be careful here, people, because like I said, I've seen more people stand up for Rodney King and OJ than I've seen for Obama. Now, I'm not saying you were right or wrong about it. I said, but a mobilization of an effort to stand behind something greater than just your cultural heritage is at stake here.
Well,
right?
you got to do that.
So
My father encouraged, let me and I plead to you, black folks, you have got to develop, and it's not just black folks, but I'm speaking to them first because it's a personal, close thing. We got to develop an international viewpoint. You got to insist that you develop an international viewpoint.
Right.
You got to.
First,
you absolutely got to.
Definitely.
And then you will start to see the parallels. And it'll help you to understand this country better
Right.
when you take a look at what's going on worldwide, and especially when you do a historical perspective on top of that. It'll cause you to have opinions.
Yeah.
Okay, that's for real.
Right. In other words, they say, try to leave your block. Try to go visit. Leave your block.
That's okay. That's Victor. See, Victor gives them. I write down Victor's quotes because Victor comes up with the best quotes. Try to leave your blocks. Try to leave your block. Victor came up with Pack Stereo.
I'm just saying.
Try to leave your block. That's Victor Allen.
It just, I'm sorry, and you don't
try to leave your block, even if you do it on the internet.
I'm just saying. I'm only saying. Everybody uses the excuse that I can't afford to travel. I said the information's there to learn about a lot of cultures, and you could travel in the mind and stay right where you are and learn a lot more. I'm telling you.
Well, that's the thing, and that's the issue we have. I want to say I love the way we interact with that as a group in the chat room and bounce that off each other. Everybody remember at Pack Stereo, interactive live chat room. We got some moderators in there. At least I'm trying to make them moderators. Ideally, Norman, Mac, PMC are all moderators when they're in the chat room. I got to double check. If you should say moderator next to your name or something. I don't know.
Well, I just think it's wonderful that we get the input. And PMC, I absolutely sympathize with you when you say sometimes they won't let you leave. They won't let us leave. I do understand that most of the time, your housewives will not let you leave the home, and I know you're sending out a message there, and we'll see what we can do to see if we can give you a little bit more freedom because you're under shackles right now.
Always messing with PMC. Poor married man. I don't mess with man with no brothers married and still staying. Because I never could.
See, I already know.
I give respect to brothers married. I do. Because I know I was weak. I was like, I barely got them in. I didn't even come close. Y'all know how close I came to being married? Not close at all. Not close at all.
I read the message.
I thought about it a couple times. I have considered marriage 2 or 3 times.
See,
I ain't never jumped up.
I just want you to know, man, I read code. So when I read code, there's a dictionary called handicap. And it's it's not to mean anything about the handicapped people who are really handicapped. It just says, there's some brethren that talks about I'm handicapped, man, and they won't let us leave. No. And then I went to look up at the deep dictionary, and under us, it said wives. So I'm gonna try to see if I can do something for you, man.
See, he can't say shit. That's why it's cold. See, I think it's cold, PMC, because I know it's a setup. You can't say shit. You can't, and I'm gonna tell you, don't even start. Don't even start.
You can't.
We just, that's how when I practice being married, that's when I don't say nothing. How when you see me just sitting there biting my lips and go, what's Mario doing? He's practicing being married.
Oh, man.
All right. Story number 2 for the day, you guys, has to do with the anniversary of the Occupy Wall Street movement. I went to Wikipedia once again. Check it out. Occupy Wall Street, known to many people as OWS, is a name given to a protest movement that began on September 17th, 2011, in Zuccotti Park in New York City's Wall Street Financial District. Okay? The Canadian activist group Adbusters initiated the protest, which has led to Occupy protests and movements around the world. The main issues are social and economic inequality, greed, corruption, and the supposed undue influence of corporations on government, particularly from the financial services sector. Again, this is something alluded to by our chat room participants. The OWS slogan, "We are the 99%, addresses the growing income inequality and wealth distribution in the U.S. Wow. All right, so that's what we wanted you to know. It's been the Occupy Wall Street movement. It's their anniversary. I wanted, so we went and got a video here. Take a look. New York City, Occupy Wall Street.
Those stories still to come, but first, over 140 Occupy Wall Street activists have been arrested in New York. They're marking a year since their anti-corporate movement kicked off there in New York before snowboarding across the whole country and abroad. Well, now the occupiers want to regain new momentum with mass rallies on the first anniversary. RT's Marina Portnair is at the epicenter, joins me live. Marina, the number of arrests, as I say, has reportedly topped 140. Tell us, what is the latest situation where you are?
Keep walking. You're blocking vehicular and pedestrian traffic. If you do not keep walking,
vehicular traffic here.
The situation is quite tense. About 30 seconds before you just threw to me for this live, one person got arrested. Matt, if you could just, my cameraman's going to pan to the scene. I don't know how well the video is. There is an enormous amount of activists on the street, and I would say it's a 1-to-1 ratio of police officers and activists.
Wow.
They do not hesitate. I cannot stress this hard enough to arrest anybody that steps their foot on the street. Now, we've been here for at least 8 hours, and right now the crowd is the largest we've seen thus far. This crowd, of course, coming out here to mark the 1-year anniversary of this Occupy movement, a movement that began here in New York City in Zuccotti Park and then blazed across the nation and around the world. The organizers say their hope is to reignite the passion that was somewhat lost, so there could be more focus and attention put on economic inequalities and the corporate influence on U.S. politics.
Well, clearly the authorities are clamping down over this particular event at the moment. What exactly has the movement faced, though, over the past year?
Well, the past year has been quite difficult for this movement. On one hand, they received an unprecedented amount of support. I don't think they were even expecting the amount of support they would receive in a matter of a month, particularly when 800 protesters were arrested crossing the Brooklyn Bridge. Other protesters were dealt with police officers attacking them with mace. There was heavy-handed tactics used against these activists in New York City and throughout the country, but they remained driven with their message, and it was only when they were removed from their campgrounds did this movement suffer a bit of a blow. I'm not sure if we do have the report, but we have a background report by RT's Anastasia Chirkina. Do we have that to run, Bill?
We certainly do, and here it is. Thanks very much, Marina.
Wow. Wow.
Well,
now let me tell you something. PMC made a good point. What if it continues? Hey, PMC, is that the title of the video? He had a video he had placed up here before about this. What if it continues? What if this goes on? What if the situation continues to accelerate? So I'm trying to look for that at the same time. But yeah, definitely. You know what? I'm in love. Well, I'm catching a little virus here. I'm in love with the Occupy Wall Street movement. Absolutely in love with it. I'm in love with the Arab Spring. I'm in love with these organic movements that actually spring out. They are the product, the spark of the energies of the people's yearning for a better day. That's what they are. So all of those things I have to embrace. And I'm also embracing kind of what we're doing. Because you know what? This is where citizen journalism becomes very important.
Well, let me.
This is where it becomes very important.
This is one of those catch-22s. Let's say there's all of a sudden a boom. And jobs. The economics changes. The culture stays the same in corporate and privatization. All of a sudden, the percentage of unemployment goes down. There are more people working, but the philosophy of the doctrine of how you do business stays the same. Do you continue Occupy Wall Street?
I think you continue to protest because it's a lifestyle.
But wonder if the people who are protesting find themselves saying, you know, there are more people getting jobs because a lot of those protesters may be philosophical or are unemployed. We don't know, do we?
Well, here's the thing. Those of us who studied this, and we did back in my day at school, we acknowledge that pacification is one of the oldest policies. In fact, Machiavelli said, if those of you who read The Prince by Machiavelli, which is a little thin book that's all about teaching young royalty how to rule. That's what The Prince is actually about. And Machiavelli was teaching the young royalty how to rule. And he says in there, he says, the common man really, I'm paraphrasing, the common man never really cares who rules him. When you come in and take over a country, give the people a little more grain and cut their taxes a little bit, and they will welcome you with open arms. So the truth is that the common man is always willing to embrace the new takeover force. All they have to do is reward him. Mm-hmm. This is what they tell you. This is all Machiavellian. Okay, those of you who don't know. But this is the way it works. So no, Vic, you're totally right. The ability of the powers to be to pacify the public. Does anybody remember how the L.A. riots, the Rodney King riots ended?
I wasn't born.
Well, it ended because the checks came out. They released the checks early. You talk about the welfare checks.
I heard about it.
And everybody stopped rioting and got in line.
So that 47%.
So what did that tell you?
The government is heavily dependent upon by the average man and woman, right?
Well, they're heavily dependent.
And see, so it makes...
Well, so the Occupy Wall Street movement, we think is not yet defined, of course, because like the Arab Spring, it sprung out of the energies.
Right.
There is no ones to really go to because there's no true centralized leadership. It's an amalgamation of a multiple organizations.
Right.
But we know that it is an ongoing thing. Now we have to question, where do we go from here?
Well, the part I'm questioning is when they say it's like moving into a neighborhood. When the neighborhood is cool and all of a sudden you see more what we call upliftment in your neighborhood, you welcome it. But then all of a sudden, if the wrong element comes in your neighborhood, you start to rebel. Well, the part I'm looking at is that the Occupy movement was philosophical. Well, if it was, why did it take so late to spring up? So it waited till that economic cut hit them. All of a sudden, they're coming over into my neighborhood. Let's say something about it. I said, so it was based on the economics of you, not the philosophical part. That's where I'm trying to define their movement. Is it because they finally got hit in the checkbook where a lot of people are already there? And if 50 million people were already poor, and that was last year, Occupy Wall Street is probably about a year.
So you're saying, what is it that makes them come out?
Well, I'm just saying, did it take 45 million? No, it took 50.
So how bad does it have to be to make people protest?
That's my whole point.
I always love to refer to a line from the Declaration of Independence. Okay? And where they say, mankind is more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable.
Right.
Than to right this wrong by abolishing a form of government to which they have become accustomed.
Right.
But when a long train of abuses.
Right. That's all.
See, that's what they basically say. So they're basically saying, this is Thomas Jefferson, right? Mm-hmm. He's saying that people are inclined to just take shit as long as they can take it.
Right.
They just rather not protest. You have to really drive them.
Right.
Machiavelli says the same thing.
Right.
You drive them to that point, then you back off. And that's how you know the point to drive them to.
And if you had to go look at it, I said, you look at the movement of the people who are part of Occupy Wall Street. You may say there's all types, but you can clearly see the economics. I'm just going, the economics here is that has anybody been able to determine the backgrounds of where most of these people have come from? Family, otherwise.
I mean, for Occupy Wall Street.
Occupy Wall Street. Because
I don't know.
It's a difference.
I don't know. And even if it's an interesting question. There's a lot of things about the different groups that make up different parts of the activity based on the ones that are most pushy, I guess.
That's right. That's what I'm saying.
Which still may not be equal to the number of people.
Right.
Right? In other words, the loudest ones in the Occupy Wall Street movement may not have the most followers.
Right.
They may just be the loudest.
Thank you. And I'm only saying...
Okay, that's important to remember.
Right. There is what they call micro-leaderships in there, not defined by title.
Because it's not a defined, or you can imagine, that's what people are frustrated because, well, why don't they run it like this? Because it's not that kind of a thing. That's what you're supposed to be noticing. If it was that kind of a thing, then you would wonder who was actually running it.
Right. My fear is that when you have three classes, the poor class has already been there. The rich class is trying to stay rich, and the middle class is the one that's hollering.
Well, that's the way it is.
That's my fear.
And so it is.
Right.
Now,